Good afternoon and welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting for Monday, October 18th. And I have with me on my left-hand side, Councilmember Marley Larimer, my right, Councilmember Seth Winder-Core, our Director of Public Works, Chad Bieren, and we have one more over there. We have Cheryl Seth very ably keeping us in line and all that we say recorded. So, welcome to the meeting, and are there any changes to the agenda? No changes to the agenda. In that case, I am ready for a motion.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve minutes for October 4, 2021.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from the October 4th meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries, and we are moving right on to Shivani Light, and that's on our commute trip reduction.
Well, thank you. Hello, welcome. My name is Shivani Lal. I am the city's commute trip reduction program coordinator. I am here to present the 2021-2022 Transportation Demand Management Agreement and Grant. Of note, the state's commute trip reduction program is going through visioning with a shift focus on all trips and also rebranding to transportation demand management. Stay on the other slide, Cheryl. Too fast. That one. Thank you. Commute trip reduction is a state-mandated program intended to reduce the drive-alone trips during commute. The program provides information and supports businesses and increases access to alternative transportation services. The state mandates that all businesses that participate in this program of 100 or more employees traveling between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. to participate in this program. As traffic congestion increases, I find more and more businesses are interested in this program. Interested businesses see commute trip reduction as a fringe benefit to attract and retain employees, especially the prospect employees who prefer commuting as an alternative mode. Program benefits. Transportation demand management not just addresses commute congestion, its efforts reduce air pollution and protects water quality. This program reduces our overall road maintenance cost and increases active transportation, improving the overall health of our community and the city. All these factors, as well as the increased use of and interest in transit option, helps the city retain and attract businesses and development. CAN's program supports mandated business as well as interested businesses. I provide information and materials detailing carpool, van pooling, transit, bus and train, teleworking, compressed work weeks, bicycling, walking options, and all to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. I work with 25 commute trip reduction mandated businesses, as well as any non-mandated businesses that have question or require support. CAN's program reaches over 14,000 employees. A biannual survey is the state's requirement for affected businesses. The survey is a snapshot that details how employees are commuting. This snapshot helps us measure program success. The last survey was done in 2018, and the next survey is scheduled in fall of 2022. In addition to the survey, the state requires that worksite complete an annual employer report. This gives us an insight to what companies are doing to promote active transportation. And together with survey gives us an opportunity to promote events to meet business needs. CAN's program is mainly funded by this grant. I participate in multiple partnerships to support and promote CAN's transportation demand management program. In these partnerships, we both learn and share information and resources to better support our businesses. The demand for transportation demand management program is growing as the population and employment increases in the city. I tailor our messaging and provide customer service to our diverse business types. These are the samples of QR codes that lands to story maps to promote Kent's transportation demand management program. These were emailed and mailed to impacted businesses and interested businesses. And you also have a hard copy with you here. Before you is a $106,007 Washington State Department of Transportation grant. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. You have quite a task. This goes out to 14,000 businesses.
I love it.
You are interfacing, and if somebody, you go out to them proactively, but they can also contact you. So, any questions or comments? Councilmember Lerner?
None from me. I think it's a great program.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kaur?
Just a comment, great job on your presentation, and thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And these little QR codes are very handy. I think they'd be very easy. So, did you mail these out? And is there a place that if somebody wanted to pick up one, maybe because they were an employee, that they could just stop by and pick one up, or should they see their employer?
I'm planning to do outreach events with other events that the city is planning, and once we have that outreach events, I usually table those. Pre-COVID, I would be in the business sites and we'll deliver it in lunchrooms. So post-COVID, it's been electronic. But yeah, I'm happy to share it any public spaces.
Great, very nice. Thank you. So in that case, are we going to move this on to council?
I believe so. Chair, I move to authorize the mayor to sign the Transportation Demand Management Implementation Agreement, WAS.PTD 0443, for the term of July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2023, subject to the final terms and conditions acceptable to the Public Works Director and City Attorney.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for the authorization of this grant. And all in favor?
Aye.
We will move this on to council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, then, next up, we have Mike Mactutis. And Mike is going to be talking to us about the USGS Joint Funding Agreement.
Good afternoon.
Would you hold on one moment?
Your microphone.
Thank you very much. I'm going to repeat what I just said. You saw my mouth, or you didn't see my mouth moving, but my microphone was not on. So what we just did was vote to accept, or to move on the grant for the trip reduction. And now we have Mike Mactutis with us, who is going to talk to us about the USGS Joint Funding Agreement.
Thank
So
you.
Mike.
Thank you, Committee Chair Fincher and council members. Mike Mactutis, I'm the city's environmental engineering manager. And what I'm here to present to you is an annual agreement that the city has been doing in partnership with the USGS for over 20 years. So we've collected a lot of data about the creeks, and what it does, the agreement partners the city with the USGS to maintain and operate 7 stream gauges. 4 of them are on local creeks and then 3 of them on the Green River. And so I'll go through and talk about just the benefits of that program and the costs. So this is one less gauge than we've done in the past. The map on the screen shows the area around the Clark Springs watershed. The large dot, the Rock Creek gauge, is remaining, and that is necessary for the city to measure how much flow is augmented into the creek as part of our Clark Springs Habitat Conservation Fund, or Habitat Conservation Program. The green dot is a downstream gauge that the city has had for quite a while as kind of a backup to that one. But we've determined that it's really not necessary. And just due to the increasing costs on the other gauges, we thought it would just be more cost efficient to just not pay for it anymore, since we haven't really needed it in the past. And it's not part of the Habitat Conservation Program. So there's 3 gauges on the local creeks in the valley. One, as you can see, Mill Creek at the upstream end of the valley, and then 2 at the downstream end, where Mill Creek and Springbrook Creek combine to go into Renton. And so we are going to maintain these gauges. These have been very valuable, upstream gauge especially, when we're trying to determine real time what's going on with some of the Mill Creek flows near James Street and some of the areas that have tended to overtop the roadways, we can tell right away remotely what's going on out there. So there's those 3 gauges. And then there's 3 gauges on the river that the city is the partner for. The gauge at the south end, the Auburn gauge, is extremely critical to us because the Corps of Engineers uses it to determine how much flow they let out of the dam, out of the Howard Hanson Dam, but the city is not a partner on that gauge. But it is a part of the 4 gauges going down through the river now that gives us a good idea of what's going on. And the 2 gauges, as you might remember, in the middle, Meeker Street and 277th were added last year because of the flows that we had in 2020. And we could see the amount of flow differences that happened upstream of the agricultural area compared to downstream of that area. And you can see on the gauge on the bottom, or the chart on the bottom on this sheet, the red line was the Auburn gauge measurement, and you can see it peaked very high. And then the green line was the 200th Street gauge. So there was a big difference from where the peak was at Auburn compared to where it was at 200th Street. So we worked with the USGS to add a couple more gauges so we can get a better idea of what happens in between those 2 gauges. That's going to help us target our efforts. So when we do levee patrols or we're monitoring the river for flooding, we'll know where to go a lot quicker because we'll see, if the water's going into the agricultural area or if it's coming out, we'll determine whether we need to focus people on the upstream part of the valley or the downstream part. And then you can see in the top chart, January of 2021, we didn't really have that high of a flow this last winter. It was a pretty moderate winter. I think the highest the flows got were just under about 8,000 cubic feet per second, and the levees are mainly designed for up to 12,000 cubic feet per second. So it was a pretty moderate winter, as I said. And like I mentioned, one of the things that we use these gauges for is you can see they measure the elevation of the water, and so we have topographic elevations of the city where we can compare the water elevation to the ground elevation behind the levee. So that's where we really start looking at when we need to go out and take a closer look at the levees and make sure that there's not water seeping through them, that there's not a problem with a tree getting hung up or things like that when the water starts getting above the ground elevation. So the city's portion of this agreement for this year is $116,000. Last year it was $124,000, but as I mentioned, because we took one of the gauges off, it's gone down to $116,000. Total is $159,000. I have talked to the USGS and with our concerns about the costs, the increasing costs because even though it went down, our portion of the cost still went up a little bit this year. And they have told me that they will work with us to try and get some other local sponsors to help participate in that. So we're going to be working on that over the next year, particularly on the Green River gauges, which are much more regional in nature. And I mean, they're certainly very valuable to us, but they're valuable to a lot of other agencies as well. And one of the other things that we will be, and I'll be talking about this more at a city council workshop coming up in November, is working with the USGS on the rating curve and the Auburn gauge, which changed dramatically in that 2020 storm, which raised the river a little bit, allowed the Corps to release more water, which impacts us tremendously, but I'll be talking about that more next month. But the USGS has worked with us very closely to try and make sure that the gauge ratings that they put on the gauge down in Auburn is going to be correct. And they're going to check it as soon as the water comes up again. And I am available to answer any questions.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that the USGS is going to be looking at the other areas, is chipping in this too, with the valley and all of the jobs that are there, all of the freight that comes in and out of this valley. It's extremely important to the region and to the state, so that's good news for us. Fellow council members, any comments or questions? No. In that case, ready for a motion.
Chair, I move to authorize the mayor to sign the joint funding agreement for water resource investigations between the City of Kent and the U.S. Geological Survey in the amount of $116,611, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Public Works Director and City Attorney.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Before we take a vote, in case somebody wanted to see this information real time, they're able to go on and do that. Is that information posted anywhere that they could find that address?
It is on the lower left of this slide up on the, the easiest way is just to Google it or to do a web search of USGS gauges in Kent, Washington. But I also have the website up there.
Thank
And
you.
that is in the packet also. It's in the action sheet if somebody wants to look at that in the online version of the packet.
Excellent. And it's also here on the motion sheet.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure that people knew where that was. Okay, well, then we are ready for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
It has been moved and has passed that we will move this on for the mayor to authorize the joint agreement between the water resource investigation, or for the water resource investigation between the city and the U.S. Geological Survey, the amount of $116,611. Thank you very much. Okay, the next step, we have Sound Transit Federal Way Link Extension Temporary Construction Agreement. And Cheryl.
Hello. Hi, I'm Cheryl Rolcik-Wilcox. I'm a Public Works Property and Acquisition Analyst, and I'm here to talk to you a bit about a temporary construction easement. We're just going to call it TCE for short here in this presentation, that Sound Transit has requested the city grant to it. It's a 743 square foot temporary construction easement, and it's for the Federal Way Link Extension Project. This temporary easement is located next to another TCE that the city has already granted to Sound Transit. It was granted back in December of 2019, and it's located on property just north of South to 72nd Street. Okay, this TCE, it will remain in effect for until June 30th of 2025. So it's a long TCE, which is why we had to bring it here today. The easement, or until the easement area is cleared up. So until it's all cleaned up, that's how long it will remain in effect. Although Sound Transit does have the option to extend the term of the TCE for an additional 6 months. So you can kind of see the TCE area on these plans as well as the picture I just showed. So the TCE area was appraised by Sound Transit and is valued at $72. But their minimum consideration or compensation amount isn't $1,000. So they're going to pay us $1,000 for the easement, which was made under threat of condemnation. The proceeds will be placed in the Drainage Utility Fund, and that's the fund where the property acquisition was paid for out of when it was purchased, so it'll just go in there. Staff's reviewed the appraisal, and we recommend that council authorize the mayor to sign the TCE to complete that transaction. Does anyone have any questions?
I have no questions. Pretty sweet deal, $1,000 for $72, but
I do have a question.
Sure.
So if you go back a couple slides to the aerial shot.
Okay.
So that looks pretty close to a housing community. What exactly are they planning to do on this easement?
It's part of the construction project. I'm not sure. Kelly Peterson would have a better idea. Chad, do you?
Yeah, they're actually building part of the street frontage. So they're not going back on the property very far. They're going to just build a gutter sidewalk on 272nd. They're going to widen it as part of the project.
So not a huge impact to the residents, no more than any other road construction. So.
Right, correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. No further questions?
Councilmember Corr?
Okay, with that, Chair, I move to authorize the mayor to sign a 743 square foot temporary construction easement to Sound Transit on King County parcel number 282204-9017, subject to final terms and conditions acceptable to the Public Works Director and City Attorney.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to have the mayor sign the agreement for the 743 square foot temporary construction easement with Sound Transit. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It has been approved. We will move that on to council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next, we have information only, Chad Bieren. We're going to be talking about Naden.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an item that came up during a council meeting with regard to the budget. There's a budget request to include $2.8 million to complete the intersection shown on the slide there on the left at Naden and 74th Avenue South on Willis Street. A little bit of history on this, and this aerial actually, it's new enough now that the roundabout's in there on the right side of the photo at 4th and Willis. And there's quite a bit of history here. The Naden Parcel is on the upper left side of the photo. This was an area that was purchased by the city with the intention of constructing an aquatic center back in the mid-2000s. After we've gone obviously a different direction with our partnership with the YMCA and a number of other things, gosh, I think we've even had a downturn and a half in there since those plans were discussed. And cities since decided to sell that property. It's currently being marketed. And so when the aquatic center was proposed, it talked about trying to get improved access. And that area is controlled by the State Department of Transportation. And it's what's called limited access for SR 516 or State Route 516, which is Willis Street, Kent Des Moines Road. And as part of that discussion, originally they'd said no a number of times. We'd gone back several times to ask for that break in access, and they'd said no. We went back in it was about 2014, 15, with this new concept showing the roundabout that's now there at 4th and Willis, and removal of the northbound to westbound left turn out of 74th Avenue South. You see that black island right in the middle of the photo. If you go to the next slide, Cheryl, a little more focused. That northbound to westbound left turn would be taken out, and trucks, cars, anybody coming out of 74th would go to the east and make their way through the roundabout. So it's a way of improving the traffic operations through that whole area by removing that one movement is actually, it's pretty, it interrupts the flow coming off of the freeway. And so it's very helpful to get that moving back around the roundabout. And the roundabout has enough capacity that it's not a big deal. And so the state was like, hey, okay, we take a look at, we're a little more into it now. We'll consider this. The provision that they gave us was, we'll give you the break in access, take a look at how the roundabout would work at 4th and Willis operationally and make sure this thing works out. We did that. We also made a budget request in the state budget to get some help paying for the roundabout. We got that, and then made it a capital project. Obviously, it's there and operating now. So this request, current request, is to the 2.8 million completes what's shown on the screen now, which is the connection into Naden, along with the removal of that northbound to westbound left turn. You'll notice that the westbound to southbound left continues. We're able to do that. That would just be a permitted left turn. So as opposed to having a signal there, cars would come up. As soon as they get a gap, they can go down and use 74th and access the businesses there. That was required because otherwise from the east you couldn't really get onto 74th Avenue South. So this gives complete access still to that area located south of Willis Street. And then there's still a signal at the intersection because of the right in, right out is signalized, and also the pedestrian crossing of Willis, which is the interurban trail crossing right there. We need to have that signalized. And so just traffic operations wise, it makes sense for us to keep the signal in play. So the request is to include all those improvements and get this area finished and ready for the next several decades.
End of your report?
End of my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Corr, Councilmember Larimer, questions, comments?
I have a couple questions, I think, because this was originally my request for additional information. So we successfully secured state funding for the roundabout. Is there a reason why we wouldn't be able to successfully secure state funding for this improvement?
We could make the request again. I think that part of it would be, you never know when the state funding's coming. And there was the ability with the infusion of ARPA dollars into the city budget. It gave us some ability to move money around and make this a possibility now as opposed to waiting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not opposed to this project at all, and I want to see it for the city long term. I just have, it feels very much to me that ARPA dollars would be better spent when I look at the TMP and I look at there's 51 other projects on that list. And when I start looking down on, pages, pages 17 to 22, and you see the maps, the different project locations and the ones in red that are directly related to safety. I personally would prefer to see us, put ARPA dollars towards safety measures, but that's just my preference. But I'm not against this project at all. It's just whether it's using ARPA for it or not, I have questions and concerns about.
One of the other considerations we had is that the state has granted that access. There's no indication that they would take it away, but they went for many years saying no. Once we had the approval, we thought it comes under strike while the iron's hot. It's here, it's ready to go. Let's complete the project. We have the related parks improvements that are going on right now between 4th Avenue and the Union Pacific tracks. And then, of course, we're working through the quiet zone proposal as well right now. So it's just trying to get this part of it ready to go and buttoned up.
Okay. Well, thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Councilmember Corr?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I see where Councilmember Larimer is going with this because it seems more like a capital improvements project, and I think we need to find out city funding or somewhere else for this project because ARPA funding is for rescue plans. So I see where she is. I can see her concerns, and I felt the same way. So I appreciate your update on this, but we'll have to see where the council stands on this because I think.
Yeah.
Then it sounds like this is going to move on to the council as other business. Right, but he's going to have to have a presentation
tomorrow,
to the
maybe.
council.
Yeah, I know that we talked about bringing it back with more information here to the committee. So at the committee's pleasure or council's pleasure, if they want more information at the council level, I can give the same presentation later as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we are going to move on to Veterans Drive, also. Director Bieren.
Yes, I don't have a rendering of this, but there's the section of Veterans coming down from Military Road. We included curb gutter planters and a planted median when we constructed the project back in 2006. At that time, there was not water coming down the hill. That's over in Highland Water District service area. And we chose not to bring an extension of water down the hill. So, and I should say, so did Highline. They waited for development to construct the water main. So we had no way of irrigating that area, and we came up with a planted island and then the planter strips that could survive without irrigation. They've proven to be fairly labor intensive, and we send a crew out there once a year for about a week or so. Dave could probably give you the exact number of days, Dave Brock, but we do go out there, maintain it once a year, try and keep it from getting too overgrown. But again, the discussion was, hey, what could we do to improve the area coming down up the West Hill with 509 opening? And one of the things we came up with was improving those planters, both in the median and on the planter strips themselves. So again, capital request for $1 million to bring in irrigation and improve that area. I should say these were developed in the summer. One of the things council would, or at the committee level, we have a discussion coming at a future meeting, probably second meeting in November, on pollinator gardens. And I don't know, I am not the plant expert, but we're teeing those folks up to come and talk about pollinator gardens. I don't know what irrigation requirements would look like for pollinator gardens, but this is one of those areas too that we were thinking of could be a potential area that would be a test case for us.
Excellent. I know that maintenance requirements in the pollinator gardens is much less than in many other styles of gardens. Mm-hmm. And it also gives us the benefit of bringing back the pollinators for our food sources, the food that's grown around here. Councilmember Larimer?
Yes. Again, big fan of pollinator gardens. I would love to see that use here. However, I kind of have similar concern about using ARPA dollars or even capital fund. I guess when we're talking about $1 million to bring irrigation to an area, you know, even for pollinator gardens, I would rather see us perhaps, you know, the way the environment is going, do something that doesn't require any irrigation. I don't know. That's just a lot of money for irrigation for plantings along a roadway. So this is the project I just really have to question entirely, unfortunately.
Councilmember Corr?
What is the timeline for the 509?
They're going to start construction next year. They should be open in late 2024, early 2025.
You think we might be able to find funding in between now and then? I mean, we'll have to. It's going to be the main gateway into the city, and people using that road a lot more than they do right now. So it does make sense. But I hear you. I think our sidewalks and some of the other roads probably could use funding at the moment than this project. So
Yeah. I drove it the other day, and then we got that big, beautiful veteran sign, and I don't know, I didn't find it particularly lacking in aesthetics, so.
yeah, that's just my feedback.
Okay. You know that we've had some complaint emails on it, on Veterans Drive, but I also understand looking at it to see what else we can use that funding for. So, you know, one of the things that I am interested in is bringing in electricity for charging stations, additional charging stations, so that we can start looking at an electric fleet. So finding out what the cost would be for that. But anyway, there is more information on this to come since it was an information item.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a basis of where the request was coming from. I want to make sure that was clear. I may not have been clear. The $1 million includes all the plantings too. It's not just for irrigation, but a significant portion of the cost would be bringing the irrigation. And the water mains have been constructed by the housing developments that are up there now. We would need to pay for system development charges to Highline and bring the lines over into the median. So it's a component of the total cost.
Okay. If that is it, no other questions on that part, then that brings us to the end of our meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To figure out the logistics behind this kind of innovative approach of using aluminum panels wrapped with vinyl, with the artwork transferred to that medium. And of course, our artists, Nick and Ian,